Welcome to LFPL's At the Library series, an ongoing podcast featuring author talks, programs, and events at the Louisville Free Public Library. For more information about upcoming events, visit us online at www.lfpl.org/upcoming-events.htm.
Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
I mean, I'm looking out on this crowd. And it's like old home week. I mean, the fact that Harvey and Kathy could bring everybody in was about as good as it gets. I mean, about as good as it gets.
Thank you.
Now, the run of the show is going to go as follows. First, everybody buy a book, which is over there. John, you know how that goes. You'll be the next one to write a book, and we'll have Congressman Yarmouth as our next book.
Yeah. Where's he? Okay, good to see you. Yeah.
And Lonnie Ali is here in the front row with Kathy, so it's just really
Great,
special.
Yeah.
All right, the run of the show is I'm going to say a few words, and then we're going to turn it over to Harvey, and he's going to say a lot of words. Hi. And then he may even read a little bit from the book. And then we're going to do question and answers, and then you're going to buy books. So it's that simple. I mean, it's that simple. You know, we want to be sure that Harvey and Kathy have plenty of extra financial support as they continue their life together after 40 some odd? 54 years. 54 years. Wow. Wow. You know, as I was coming down, I'll let some folks get in and get settled. As I was coming down today, I read the book over the last couple of days, thanks to Harvey giving me an early copy, and it gave me a chance to sort of skip down memory lane a little bit myself. And, you know, I was trying to figure out how to introduce him. He called me up and said, I want you to introduce me. I said, here comes Art Garfunkel. Come on, Art. Artie,
Yeah.
you're the man.
Hi, good to see you.
Larry Lenahan.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh.
I always thought he looked like Art.
I like those shorts.
Did you think? Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was looking through the book, and I began to think. Hey, Jill. I began to think of the wonderful things that we just all, as time goes by, sort of forget, and yet as you read the book, you get to relive it again and realize what an outstanding job Harvey and his team, be they in the mayor's office or in the county judge's office, how the campaigns were put together. I mean, you know, Harvey comes into Louisville back in about 68, 67, 68, out of the mountains of eastern Kentucky, and he put some shoes on and he rolled over to Park Duval at the old Cotter and Lang facility, which is now significantly better, if I say so myself.
And you helped on that.
Well, we all did. It was a good one. And he, as he went through that process and looked at this new hometown of his, he began to realize that he had the urge, having been in public health for so many years and caring about the public for so many years, that this community needed some new leadership. And that was the 1973 election, where Carol Whitten, who was the president of the Board of Aldermen, as many of you, if I don't tell this right, Alderman Owen, would you please bring me up to date? Tom Owen is here, our historian. And so, you know, he's only down 27 points going into the election. So this young guy over in Park Duval and his bride and I guess daughter at that time was Abigail?
Abigail.
Yeah, was born, who's now working for Peter Hart, or part of the organization with Peter Hart. She's a partner. She's not working for him.
She's been there 30 years.
30 years. So they come in, and the next thing you know, he's running for office, and I saw Lacey Smith come in. Lacey, where did I see you? Okay,
Hey.
Lacey. The urban legend, you tell me whether it's true or not in terms of that campaign, was that all this put on the zipper windbreaker, red windbreaker, and go out and and walked door to door in all the neighborhoods was all brought about because you guys wanted him out of the headquarters.
Yeah,
He was a
right.
pain in the neck, and he was just getting in everybody's way. And then you at Briscoe and Mershon and Meese and who else was out there? Anyway, all said, get him out walking. Well, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to us as a community, because as a result of all of that, Harvey Sloane became the neighborhood's mayor of this community. And he energized us all in the neighborhoods in which we lived and created an excitement in those neighborhoods that we hadn't had in the past. We had excellent mayors. Frank Burke was a great mayor, and Kenny Schmid was a great mayor. All these old guys, as compared to us young guys. And Harvey Sloane comes rolling in with this beautiful bride and this gorgeous child and rolls out to the Belvedere and gets sworn in with everybody out there. I was just back from law school, and I was out there just as a kid watching Harvey get sworn in. And it was an energy force. I mean, it was an energy force that changed the way we as a community saw ourselves and gave us a reason to believe that, look what we can do, Louisville, which somebody once said, and create an opportunity for us all. And so here he goes. He's elected. I did say he was 27 points behind, didn't I?
Yeah.
Mr. Neff. Did I say that, Mr. Neff?
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, he wins the race, and which is pretty exciting, to say the least. And the next thing you know, he gets sworn in, and the next thing you know, we have this. This was 1974,
Yeah.
and then in '75 we have this thing that Judge Gordon decided ought to occur in our community, called busing, and Harvey Sloane was the mayor, and had the difficulty of guiding us and leading us through a very difficult time in the community. And thereafter, he had an opportunity to pick up garbage because we had a garbage strike. And if you believe the urban legends on that, when Harvey was picking up garbage as mayor, who was out there, a young, vibrant guy, they knew where he was going to be picking up garbage, and folks in the neighborhood put rocks and bricks in the garbage can to make it heavier on.
It was tough.
It was tough.
Yeah.
But you got to also remember he did those and worked through those and helped us out. But you also got to remember that, there was a day in this community where if you got hit on the street, a policeman would throw you in the back of the car and take you to the hospital, maybe. And Harvey Sloane said, no, that's not good enough for a modern city like Louisville is and will become even more so. And the next thing you know, we worked through the professional EMS program. And then we had the Louisville transit crowd that was going bankrupt. And the question is, were we or weren't we going to have a public transportation system? And the next thing you know, we have to put on the ballot a tax. Everybody loves taxes. And it didn't work out very well. It worked out exceptionally well. And we were able to do that again under Harvey's leadership. He and I tried the library tax. I know I lost 3.
I remember,
Yeah, I don't know how many you lost, but I think we were together on 2 of those losses.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is that, he made a difference. Gosh, he made a difference. And he was 2 terms as mayor. I told him the other day on the phone that if they had changed the law as I was fortunate enough to be able to take advantage of it, Harvey Sloane would still be mayor of Louisville. I mean, he would have been mayor the whole time because of the love affair that this community had with George Harvey Ingalls Sloane. That's the full name, in case anybody.
You got it right. Yeah.
Yeah. So the book starts before city government, but there's so many city and county folks here that when you go back to the book and you find out how he met Hunter Thompson and how he climbed Kilimanjaro and how he hopped freight trains to get from here to there, you won't believe it. I mean, you know this educated, sophisticated guy, and next thing you know, he's just out there rocking and rolling as a young man, enjoying life and taking risks that many of us never would have taken. And then, we worked on the airport together, which was a very difficult time to tell 4,000 people, 118 businesses, 12 churches, and 3 schools, but who's counting, that they're going to be relocated. And we did that together. We worked on, he started the waterfront project, the dream that everybody had to take back all those leases when they were up and literally buy the land that was still owned in fee simple by some of the companies so that we could take back the waterfront and allow people to get to the water's edge, and all that has evolved. So much started as a result of Harvey Sloane's leadership, Harvey Sloane's vision, and the vision thing's really important. Somebody's got to look at that waterfront full of scrap and junk and crap-a-roo and say, that really could be something special. Well, that's what he was able to do, and created an opportunity for us all to be successful. Healthcare, obviously, not only with Park Duval, but when he was county judge, he focused a lot and developed, I think, 7 health clinics around the community. And then to finally get us to the point of merger, we had to start somewhere after we lost 2 back-to-back merger elections. And Harvey and I negotiated 29 times. We met 29 times and negotiated what we called a compact. Had a very long name, but as we walked out of the final agreement between the city and the county, he was county judge and I was mayor, we pulled out a thesaurus. I don't know if any of you remember that. I had one when I was at the White House, and I pulled it out one time when some 30-year-old asked something, and they said, "What is that?" And I said, "That's a thesaurus." He said, "No, just get online." So anyway, we called it the compact, and it gave us breathing room for 10 years or so where we could decide what we wanted to be when we grew up as a community, and we shared taxes for 10 years. We shared responsibility for different agencies, and that gave us a base, a predicate upon which we could literally move toward the ultimate merger election. So, which happened, and as you know, it passed, and it was great. So, I could go on and on. The governor's races are in that book. Carson, he mentions how you wanted him to go down. Was it to see Ali? Yep. He said you need to go down to Nashville and see him during that campaign. He still lost, Carson, but you gave him some good advice, at least on that one. But so that's all in the book too. And the ultimate bottom line at the conclusion of the book is just some tremendous advice about life and living life and creating an opportunity for those that are coming behind us to have the quality of family and the quality of just life in general that we all want. And he gives us that advice through a tremendous experience, tremendous background, a love for his family, his daughter, his sons, his grandchildren. That is something so many of us with grandkids are now sort of understanding, appreciating, and Harvey gives you that insight. So I think I've talked enough. We came to hear George Harvey Ingalls Sloane, the mayor of Louisville for 2 terms, the county judge, a healthcare-focused public health guy. And he also talks about Russia and the time he was in Russia and the things he was able to do. Talks about working with Marion Barry, who was the mayor of D.C., and how he was the health department director. That is a trip section to read, and Marion Barry was a trip. So
it really was.
Let me just turn over the microphone, although you've got one already on, to the reason why we're here. Folks, Harvey Sloane.
Thank you. Thank you, Jerry.
You bet.
I think this is one of the times you just shut up and say, let's buy the books, man. It is such a pleasure to be here, and Kathy and I coming back home and seeing so many of you and living so many memories. I've got to give you a little bit about my background. I had a privileged background. We had a nice farm in Virginia, riding horses and enjoying the good life. And then when I was 10, my father died. Never forget that moment. Mother came into the 5 o'clock into my room, and your father's gone to heaven. And it took me a while to really absorb that. But she also said, I don't want you to grow up in a female household. She was a very substantive woman, and I was an only child. So she sent me off to prep school. Got all the good education. It was all men, boys, all white. And then I got up to St. Paul's, which again was a very good education, but not very diverse. And I read The Grapes of Wrath. How many of you heard or remember that? The great story by John Steinbeck in the 30s of how the Okies, as they called them, from Arkansas, were taken off their land by the banks and the Depression and the Dust Bowl, and made the family trip to California. It was hard scrabble, and not all of them made it. After reading that, I said, I just don't know what's going on in this country. This little cocoon that I've been involved in and lived in is not real life. So at the end of St. Paul's, just before Yale, I had a classmate, and we started to hitchhike. Started out in Washington. My mother was totally against it. She said, look, I'll pay for a bus or whatever you want to do. I said, Mother, no, that doesn't work. And so we got out there. We didn't know quite how to hitchhike. Do you do it this way or do you do it that way? And we finally got on down to New Orleans and worked in a lumber yard, and then hitchhiked on West 66, the route that the Okies took. And this guy stopped and said, you guys got a license? Yeah, we got a license. Do you want to tow a car and carry another, tow a car and drive another to Portland, Oregon? That's where I'm selling these used cars. Oh, yeah, we give you $3 a day to do it. Oh, man, that's really top drawer. So we got up there in the evening and went to the Sally, the Salvation Army, and did our bowing and scraping and what have you. And then the next morning, went out with the Native Americans to Mount Hood and picked strawberries. Now, let me tell you, those little cartons, they got a crate, and that's 25 cents. So if you did 50 cents an hour, you were doing it pretty good. Well, obviously, the Native Americans had their family in and what have you. From there, we went on down to Tijuana and worked with the Mexican Americans picking celery. Now, it might sound kind of a soft job, but you got to squat all day, hot sun, you can't get up and run around, and then we were in the same barracks that they were in. Well, it opened my eyes. Next summer, went up to Alberta, Canada, a place called Peace River on the Alcan Highway. And there was a bulk oil station, and they needed help, and they were building what have you. So the guy I was with had a car, and he came down to the border in Montana. He said, look, I'm going west. You're going east. There's a fruit express coming from Spokane, Washington, going to Chicago. You might want to take it. But one admonition, if the train is moving, don't get on the rear ladder, because you can lose your grip and fall between the cars. So this train came in, all about 17 cars, and I got on the front ladder and then got up on the catwalk, and the sun was coming up, and it was a beautiful day, and going through every little community, kids would see me come out, wave, and, it was the greatest thing in the world. I never enjoyed, and going 70 miles an hour in this wonderful land, and then ending up in Minneapolis. They had to get some load on. They had to re-ice, and I got a little food, got back on, and then I had a cord to put around the catwalk so I could go and sleep a little bit. And about 20 miles up, they stopped the whole train. And this guy from the caboose comes up, and he's got a light, and he sees me, he says, "Okay, kid, you got to get off." I said, "Let me just get in the caboose." No, they stopped the whole train. And you see that water there? That's the Mississippi. And you see that boat that's shining lights on the shore? That's a patrol boat. And there's a penitentiary up there, and evidently someone had escaped. So don't get caught by them. So I walked back 20 miles that night and ducking the light every time. But it was a joyous experience. I'll never forget it. I did ride the rails often thereafter, and particularly when I went to Yale, I'd go down at night to the freight car where they were making up the train for the next day. And I brought a classmate down, and unfortunately, they didn't just go up and come back. They went up and went on. and it went on to New York. And I called my classmate up before I wrote this thing. I said, "What did you think about that?" "The stupidest thing I ever did in my life." So I put in the book that I want my musical son, when I am deceased in a funeral, to play Willie Nelson, the Orange Blossom Special, going down to New Orleans. Anyway, those activities really, I started to turn to medicine because I saw people that really needed help. I went to Yale and then medical school in Cleveland. I wanted to get out of the East. I'd seen too much of it. And then I went over to the Cleveland Clinic. And the Cleveland Clinic was founded by the Kryles, Dr. George Kryles, 1925, a really famous surgeon. He did the first person-to-person transfusion of blood, which helped out in the wars tremendously. Anyway, so his son really thought I should be a surgeon. So have your internship at the Cleveland Clinic. Okay, that's an honor. So the first operation we scrubbed in on was a man that had a hernia. And Barney, which we call him, just had beautiful hands, and he moved very fast and what have you. In about 5 minutes, he stood up, took his gloves off, and said, "Now you close him up." I looked down at that bloody sort of and as he was going out the door, I don't want to offend anybody's religion, but as he was going out the door, he said, "This guy's a preacher. If anything goes wrong, he'll say, 'God willed it.'" And he left. So I got through that, and the man did leave the Cleveland Clinic, none the wiser, and everything worked out. So then we had the opportunity of joining the Public Health Service in 1964. It was either that or go into the military, and Vietnam's not doing anything. And I really didn't want to check guys for VD for 2 years. So I joined the Public Health Service. And where was it? In Eastern Kentucky. And one of the great experiences of my life. And we went to Hazard and Hell for certain, and we went to 18 different counties. There was a team of us, and we were examining families and referring them on. The Kentucky Medical Society would not let us treat them. They only wanted to treat them, but they didn't treat a lot of people, so that didn't help too much. Anyway, I was in Inez, if anybody knows where that is, in Martin County. And I had a good friend in Washington, a friend called Kay Halley, who was the sister-in-law of Dr. Kryles. and I used to stay with her when I went to Washington. And she said, there are two people you've got to meet. One is Ed Pritchard. You all remember Ed Pritchard, the guru he came out of the New Deal. He was a brain truster for FDR and one of the great brains of life he was. You remember it.
Yeah.
And Barry Bingham Sr. And I wrote Mr. Bingham, and I said, Kay said to say hello, and he immediately asked me up for lunch, and he and his wife, Mary, and they were just bubbling. It was in the Johnson, it was 66, and we just got along fabulously. And I said, Mr. Bingham, I'm thinking about doing this community health center. The poverty program that Lyndon Johnson laid the ground for started. He didn't only pass 2 civil rights bills and Medicaid and Medicare and a whole bunch of other things, and education and food for infants and what have you. But he started this community health center. It was comprehensive. They had pediatrics and adult medicine. They had emergency medicine, social service, and his son, Worth, was working with a group called the American Friends Service Committee. And there was a lady, Dora Rice, who just escaped from Germany before Hitler got the Jews. And she was running it, and they were working in Parc du Val. And so I got to meet the Parc du Val residents, and we got this thing going. And it was really one of the great thrills of my life to have this. And now it's 54 years, going strong. It's expanded. It's, as you say, it's in the county, in the surrounding counties, and it just was a wonder. Now, you're talking about shoes, not having shoes. Well, I went up to a wedding for Dr. Kryle's son, George Kryle, who wrote Charlie Wilson's War. Anybody read that?
I saw the movie.
One of the great books.
Yeah.
And George Kryle and Kathy had been friends, and I was introducing myself to my table mates, and I'm Harvey Sloane. And she came up behind me and she said, "Oh, you're Harvey Sloane. I've heard about you. You're the doctor that doesn't have any shoes in Kentucky." And I looked at her, and this in fabrication anyway, I looked at her in 5 seconds. I said, "I'm going to marry that woman." Well, it took me 9 months to, consume that, but that's how we got started. And then I, said Louisville's my home. People are friendly, and I enjoy the community, and I may have a future here. So that's when we got involved in politics and walked the city. And Kathy and I went to 250 coffees. We drank more and enjoyed it less. And I gave up coffee. And then we started am I talking too long?
Not at all.
Okay. Yeah.
Are you kidding? We're here till 8 o'clock.
Yeah, right. Anyway, that's how it all started, and I've never looked back, and it's just been a wonderful experience. Now, I got to talk a little bit about the biggest challenge that I ever faced in the 12 years, and that was the DSEG. Judge Gordon from Western Kentucky, he was from Owensboro, was a federal judge, and he was charged with desegregating the Louisville community. And Kathy and I saw this coming, and we went up to Boston. The U.S. Conference of Mayors was in Boston. And the year before, 1974, Boston really had a rough time in DSEG. And we met with the mayor. What?
Louise Day Hicks.
Oh, well, she was the one that fought busing and got a national, attention for it. But Kevin White was the mayor, and a good mayor. But, I mean, it was a wild situation. Saw him, and then Kathy and I went over and met with Tom Winship, who was the head of the Globe, Boston Globe, a great newspaper. And three things we came with: train the police and make sure there's a police presence that's strong. Secondly, encourage the judge to be very firm in his order. Judge Garrity in Boston sort of said, well, let them do a little bit of demonstration. Well, they lit a fire, but that's not that. And then it all just went to pieces. And thirdly, do something about rumor control. In Boston, it was black guy assaults white woman or girl, student, and it just went crazy. So I came back and talked to Barry Bingham, who was junior, the editor, publisher of the Courier-Journal, and he said, well, let me get that together. And so he got all the print media and the electronic media together and said, let's have one outlet for all the information about the DSEG. And that really worked well. The order was to bus, get this, 22,600 students for racial purposes to integrate cities. You couldn't integrate Louisville because 90% of the students were African American. You couldn't integrate the county because 90% were Caucasian white. So, for the first time in American history, it was a cross-community between the city and the county. Well, let me tell you, that opening day, his order was to have 11,300 come from the city, 11,300 come from the county, to 350 schools with 250 buses. I mean, you're talking about chaos. And it was just chaos. So I rode the bus with the black students down to Southwest Jefferson County. And when we got there were a lot of parents who were waiting to see me. And one man said, look, Mayor, we were in the West End, and the schools just weren't good, and we pulled our kids out, and we brought them down here to get a better education. My wife and I are working, we're mortgaged to the hilt. Now you're saying that our children have got to go back to the West End where the schools weren't that good. This is tyranny. This isn't democracy. Well, you didn't get into a philosophical discussion about desegregation. It was just, we have a federal court order, and we're going to implement this peacefully. Well, this was Thursday, the 4th of September. Friday, things really got hot, particularly in the county. And I want to read just one. Friday evening, the end of the second day, violence erupted around the county, but not the city. Thousands of students rioted at one suburban school, setting fire to buses, throwing rocks, and wounding nearly 30 police officers. We had bricks, rocks, bats, sticks, fizz, spit, profanity hurled at us and our bus drivers as we transitioned from the school to the bus, as he told the Courier-Journal. We were powerless. We struggled to understand the madness, but we knew that busing us across the county was a means to an end. We were on the heels of the civil rights movement. Well, we also got a message that the next morning, the Ku Klux Klan had organized a rally in downtown Louisville. And I called the governor, Julian Carroll, and he was running for re-election. He took over Wendell Ford's as when he went to the Senate. And Julian was not totally excited about dealing with busing in Louisville around the state. It was not a popular, but he did call the National Guard. So I had a bright young guy, Don Cox, who was is Don here?
He was just here.
He was.
And then he stepped out. He's literally sitting over there in the corner. He just stepped out.
I mean, he's dodging me, eh? Anyway, Don said, "You've got to declare an emergency. You've got to have no CBs that can organize for demonstrations. And you can't have any demonstrations in Louisville, or they just will wreck the mall, downtown, and just a total disaster." So that's what I did. And we had the state police, the city police, and the National Guard. And we kept them out of the downtown. However, for that coming Monday, the judge had said to the city police, every bus needs to have a police officer. So Kathy and I got a knock on our door at 2 o'clock in the morning, and this was the Monday morning where they should, were assigned to these buses. And the FOP, you probably knew.
Yeah, no, I know the FOP. We all know the FOP.
And he said, "Mayor, my officers live in the county. They're against this totally, and they're just not going to get on the buses." Oh, I said, "Well, let me call the marshal that's in charge of implementing this order under the federal judge." So I called him, and he said, "Well, you got to tell the cops if they're not on the buses, they're not cops anymore." So that was kind of a
Your chief's out there on the
yeah,
corner.
I know. John Nevin was a great, there he is there, a great police chief. and kept us safe, and the police acted very, very well. So it went on. We were pretty well in the city, working pretty well in the police and everything. We're trained and everything. But the county, we were ready in buses, the police were. John, you remember that? And they had nothing to eat. And they're waiting in the bus to be called, and they're not called. And Kathy said, I jumped up and said, "I'll take care of that." A good Catholic, and she called the nuns at St. Vincent de Paul, and they came over and cooked breakfast and dinner for the police officers. And that worked out pretty well.
That was the deal when Dottie Pretty, is she still alive? That passed away. Dottie Pretty chained herself to the stop sign, was carrying a weapon on her. She had a gun on her ankle, and the city police were sitting in buses waiting to help the county police out in the Southwest. County police were just getting mauled. I mean, it was just horrible. And the county judge never called Harvey or the chief to allow the city police to go in and assist.
So this DSEG caught national attention. President Ford was going to visit Louisville, and he canceled it because of security problems. The Democratic National Committee was having an issues conference in September. And Bob Strauss was the head of the Democratic Party.
At the Armory.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he was he was equivocal on this. And he wasn't sure he wanted to have the Democrats come. But we said to him, we went to Washington, Kathy and I, said, you know, Mr. Chairman, you can't run from this. This is So we had the issues conference come in, and it was pretty rough because they started to rock the cars outside the. And John Nevin and I were in back of the convention center with fire hoses, and if the protesters really started to tear things apart, we were going to have to do it. Well, thank God the conference committee called the anti-busters in and they dialogued. Anyway, it was a rough time. The community pulled through it. 40 years after that, in 2015, the Atlantic Monthly published an article entitled, "The City That Believed in Desegregation. Integration isn't easy, but Louisville, Kentucky has decided that it was worth it." Another group called the Century Foundation, which I happen to be on the board, did an analysis of Louisville. And they said, the city is unique in that it is one of the only districts that has maintained a staunch commitment to integration. That's a great compliment to you all. It was the teachers, the parents, the school board, the leadership in the city and the county, and we got through this. You know, it's not all perfect. Things are in turmoil, but that particular instance of busing 22,600 students came to an end, which was not bad. Now, do you want me to go on or what?
No, I think we want him to go on, right?
Okay.
Yeah. We're going to leave about 10 minutes for questions, and that's why we have the microphone there in the center aisle. But yeah, Harv, go ahead.
Well, after that, we had that first term that we had from 73 to 77 was really fun. A lot of things were done, whether it was TARC or whether it was EMS or what have you. There was a guy named Lou Byron. Did any of you knew Lou Byron? As I was coming down here driving, it was in the evening, to talk to people about their recollection of our administration, I called Lou and I said, "Lou, what do you feel about our first term?" He said, "You know, we didn't know what we couldn't do." And I think that is a great model for life.
Yeah.
You don't know what you can't do. So, whether it's climbing mountains or whether it's challenging the status quo or what have you. So, I went into the second term. I ran I couldn't succeed myself like you were able to do.
I think the record should reflect, I said that if he could have run, he would still be mayor.
Yeah. So I decided to run for governor. Now, there hasn't ever been a mayor that succeeded to be a governor from the mayor's office or succeeded to be a senator from the mayor's office. So Cass Harris, and where's Cass? Right. There she is back there. She was the mastermind of this 1,000-mile walk. 1,000-mile. And we met some terrific people. I remember going into Eastern Kentucky, this older gent was rocking his chair, and I came up and I said, "Sir, I'm Harvey Sloane. I'm running for governor. I need your help and vote." He said, I'm for Jesus. But I said, I am too. But he's not in this election. And then I got the next day down the road, and there was another lady sort of on the porch and what have you. And I went up and said, Harvey Sloane, run for governor. And she said, have you been born again? And I said, well, I'm working on it. So we met some wonderful people, in Knott County. There were a bunch of Sloanes, but S-L-O-N-E. Gene Autry Sloane, Kathy, you remember him? He insisted we were relatives, and he got his whole family to vote for us and everything. It was fun.
Whatever it takes.
And then after I had lost, I went back to, the last mile. Who should jog in with me but Muhammad Ali? And we met Muhammad Ali when he won the Rumble in the Jungle. Zaire, George Foreman, bigger, younger. He had had 40 fights. He'd knocked out 38 of those opponents. And Ali went in and did the rope-a-dope and knocked him clear out. Anyway, we got to, Ali said, Louisville's the greatest. And I wired him and said, this is international television. I said, Louisville, Ali, you've got to come back to you're the greatest. So he came back, and boy, we had a reception on the Belvedere, and I got to be friends with him. And then I had the privilege of officiating in the marriage in our house of Lonnie and Ali. And that was a 30-year marriage until, unfortunately, he passed away. But anyway, he was jogging in with us in the and he was doing this with the cameras, and he said, if you all don't vote for him, I'm gonna, and it's just right. So John Y. Brown came in the last moment with Phyllis George. Phyllis George had been the Miss America and ABC sports commentator and stuff. And she was quite something. And there were 5 of us in the race, 5. And we were the second and just lost by 4 points. Anyway, I went back to Hazard to thank my supporters. And they were in a cafeteria, and to get in the back room where they were, I had to pass a couple of tables. And there were 2 older gents talking. And I overheard that. And one of them said, I had my eye on that fellow, Sloane. I wonder what happened to her. And the other guy said, I think if he just had a car, he'd have won her. Oh, the joys of campaigning and stuff. It was more fun. And Kathy was out there 3 days a week. And we started from Fulton, Kentucky, right on the Mississippi. Fulton was the international banana capital of the United States. And we went there, and they'd cooked this 1-ton banana cake. And you had to have some. Oh, yes. And we left. It was 98 degrees on the pavement, and you could feel it with this banana pudding. Anyway, I went on, and Mitch McConnell beat me in the Senate race in 1990. Came within 4 points. We were dead even the Thursday before the Tuesday by Republican national polls. And then he just let out a barrage. It was basically on guns. And we had had a massacre in '89, Standard Reviewer. A lot of people killed. And I just couldn't see the sense of assault weapons. I mean, it just, they're so powerful. And they just mutilate the body. Anyway, I came out against it, and the NRA, and God, they just, Kathy would call people up and said, well, we like your husband and everything, but he wants to take our guns away. Well, we didn't want to take their guns away. We wanted to get the damn assault weapons off. And we've had 200 massacres this year in the United States of America. And we're talking about 4 to 8, 12 people that get killed in one setting. Anyway, after that, I went up, and as you mentioned, I worked for Marion Barry. Now, Marion was a charismatic figure. However, he had been arrested. It was an FBI sting, and they caught him in the Vista Hotel and with the cocaine and stuff. So he had to go upriver for about 6 months. And then he came down, he ran for the council, was elected, and then damn if he doesn't run for mayor again, and gets elected overwhelmingly. And I was, he didn't have a commissioner of health, and I was talking to my newly elected ward person, Kathy Patterson. I said, I've done some health work and stuff, and she said, well, you ought to go down there and see what Marion would do. Well, it wasn't a long line to be commissioner, I'll tell you. It was pretty grim. If I could just, I won't go on too long.
No. You got another 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay.
It's your...
The Commissioner of Health office was in Chinatown. I don't know if any, Washington all. And I went to the door, and there's this DJ. He's raising money on the radio. And I said, well, what are you raising money for? And he said, well, it's for the health employees. Oh, what do they need? Toilet paper. Oh. So the contract hadn't been paid. Is that what you're saying? Yeah. So I went up and met the staff, and I said, I want to call a good colleague of mine who's in Baltimore. How do I use this phone? The numbers. And then they pointed out the window, well, you go down and use that pay phone down there.
For a long-distance call.
Then a congressman called up. This is all the first day. The congressman called up, and he said, Mr. Commissioner, I have a constituent who died 6 months ago in your district, and the family can't get the life insurance because you guys haven't done the autopsy. Oh, man, it's going to happen. And just, I'll get right back to you. I called the medical director up to the morgue, and she said, we're 500 autopsy reports in arrears. 500. Oh. And she said, the crematorium is busted, so we can't get rid of bodies. And so I sorry to talk to you like this. That was in the Clinton administration. I knew some people, and I called up and I said, can I call the U.S. Defense Department? Yeah. So I got them to clean up the autopsies, and they said, there's more violence than we've seen since Vietnam. So anyway, we got that cleared up. But I mean, it was one thing after another. And finally, I started to use the federal government for things. And Marion said, hey, we're not an appendage of we're independent of the federal government. He fired me. And I'm almost finished. And
got to go to Russia.
Russia. Yeah. Then and this was in the newspapers and everything. And then a professor that I'd studied under in the Cleveland Clinic called me and said, "You want to go to Russia?" Yeah, I want to go to Russia. I've been there in '65. It's a fascinating country and the history and everything, and pretty rough leaders. But anyway, he said, "Well, we've got an NGO, nonprofit group, that's in partnership with the American College of Physicians, which is the largest physician specialty group in the world, actually. And they're ready to send docs over to work with Russian docs on HIV control. They were just getting the HIV. And also TB. And when you mix TB and HIV, that's a death sentence. So I went over there. I was there for 12 years in Siberia, Russian Far East, and working with the prisons. Just one last story about the prisons. There's a place called Nizhny Tagil. It's up in Upper Siberia. It's where the T-34 tank was made that the Russians claimed won the war for them. And incidentally, the importance of having the Soviets in the war was just unmistakable, because when we landed on Normandy, the German army was in the east fighting the Soviets. They lost the Soviets 27 million people during the Second World War. They took the brunt of the... And Franklin Roosevelt understood that if they'd backed out as they did in the First World War, we would have been in deep, deep trouble. And he started the Lend-Lease program with Russia, sending over uniforms, boots, equipment, and what have you. Anyway, so this T-34 that was made up there, but they have a prison, and it's only for prisoners that have tuberculosis. So this is in January, about January 20th. So I went up there, it was colder than hell, and knocked on this great metal door, and they opened it up, and this guy came out, and he had been in the Afghan war when the Soviets were fighting the Afghans and lost. And he said, "What do you want?" And I said, "Well, I hear you've got some problems with medications and not having equipment and what have you. All right, come on in." So we went up. They were operating on men, prisoners, who had chest lesions. They would operate, take it out, who would have spinal tuberculosis. They would open up and take that diseased bone out and then put steel rods in there. It was ingenious. But they didn't have any drugs. Oh. And I talked to the surgeon, and he says, we don't have gloves. I don't have any protection. And we've had 23 members of the staff that have gotten TB. And he said, "I want to show you a room," which was 30 by 30. And there were 30 prisoners, triple bunked. And it was the most devastating picture I've ever carried in my mind. These young men were scared. They didn't know what was going to happen to them. They were diseased. There were no drugs for them. And they didn't know what the hell was going to happen to them. Well, I went away deeply moved by that experience and worked with some of the Russian authorities, Soviet authorities. And the head of this prison called me back the next year. And lo and behold, people were in private beds. Windows were open for ventilation. The prisoners had built a chapel in the middle of the quadrangle, and they'd gotten drugs. So, I think we saved some lives. Anyway, I'm not a fan of Putin now, and I just deeply believe that these Ukrainians are brave. They're Democrats. They want to fight for their own future, their own. And Putin had no reason to go in there, none whatsoever, except to grab 40 million people to raise the number of people that were in Russia. Anyway, that's. I don't want to go on and and let me say, I'm blessed to have a wonderful family. We have 3 children, all healthy. Abigail, who worked with Peter Hart now for 30 years. Patrick, who's at J.P. Morgan Chase in New York. And Curtis, who works with his mother at Brown Harris Stevens Real Estate. And they form a powerful partnership.
Okay, we've got about 5 or 10 minutes. The microphone is there. Question. Yes, ma'am.
Harvey, it took me 33 years to be able to come back and tell you thank you, because you and Kathy gave me my first job working on the campaign. We traveled all the way from Pikeville to Paducah.
Oh.
Also, the second biggest thrill was taking Coach Joby Hall to Pikeville the night that you announced in a Volkswagen Bug. But I just wanted to tell you that because of you and your service, 33 years I've been in politics, and I'm the mayor of Douglas Hills. So
great.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you all for being here. My name's Bill Wells. I moved here with my wife in '89.
And when?
In '89.
Yeah.
And you were kind enough to come over to the First National Bank. And we met you. My spouse, we moved here because she could advance in the federal civil service, and she was the state director of the National Service Corps.
Wow, great.
Mr. Abramson had hired me to be the planning manager for the Office of Economic Development, and I lasted all of 5 months. I couldn't get past that, but I couldn't say I'd experienced mental illness in my life. I am from Little Rock. I was born in '52. My grandfather came down from Canada to open up the agency for Mayflower Van Lines, and the man who sailed and built the second Mayflower came out to our house. He autographed the book.
Huh.
So one thing is that my older brother passed last year from brain cancer, prostate cancer. I've developed prostate cancer. So one question might be, where is cancer research? Another one,
Well, we've got other people that are going to speak.
I understand, but I've waited 33 since '89 trying to work in this community. I live in public housing because of what happened. And if you talk about something that's made and you hear the planes coming overnight, you can't sleep. And yet I'd go up to New York and present at the National Academy of Science, or at least had a poster. So you're wondering, what's the chemistry? What's the chemistry of your life and your life to where you can say Mazel Tov? How do you really connect and bring this country back into this city? Because I sat there at Central High as a senior and wrote my senior paper about Appalachian folk music, not realizing someday I'd get to see y'all again. And if the challenge is to tune us up, how do we make the music to really show and challenge this community to have the better public housing, better religious circles, embracing all life, and to really show that we can do it, not to be the best, but usually it's gradual. I'd get to meet Jack Helrick, but I've tried and tried and tried. And I wondered if in writing these rails, you were now at the engineer level, where y'all could get that special train that says, I think we can. I think.
There you
Thank
go.
you. Thank you.
Jerry. Thank you, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Sloane, so good to see you again. My name is Durrell.
Yeah.
I am a product of the DSEG. I am a product of the Community Health Center.
Oh,
So much so that I became a board of director. And I'm still a board of director there at the health center. So I wanted to thank you for your diligence in providing such a service. And so I wanted to say thank you. Mr. Abrahamson?
Yes, sir.
Good to see you, man.
Good seeing you too.
Thank you for your hard work as well.
Thank you.
good, good.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm just blessed to be able to see you. Hello, Dr. Sloan. Hello,
Yeah,
Mayor,
nice
former
to
Mayor
see-
Abelson,
yeah.
and former Mayor Sloan. What you did when you started Park Duval Community Health, or the Neighborhood Health Center, back in '68, you changed the lives for millions of Kentuckians, because from that one small center in the beginning, there are now 23 federally qualified health centers in Kentucky serving all Kentuckians, with over 400 clinic sites. That would not,
Partly because of you.
well, no, I'm just trying to
Yeah.
figure out how to be like you and also be able to walk like you do when I'm your age. 'Cause I'm already limping. When I would come to Washington, D.C., and for Policy and Issues Conference, we'd always make sure we ate, and I'd get out of a taxi or Uber or Lyft, and I'd have my cane, and he would just come strolling down. And, I'm just really blessed that you were able to complete this book, and that the legacy of what you began in Kentucky continues to this day and continues to grow to make sure that all Kentuckians have access to quality health care.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah.
Chief,
Let me
Chief
just
Nip.
say, Ann has a great blurb in the book that you all need to read. Ann
Chief
Higby.
Nip.
Hello.
Hey,
I wanted to come up and say in public to you something I don't think I've ever said private to you yet. And that's, I want to thank you. The year before school busing started, after the judge had made his order, I was sitting around living a happy life. My staff came in and woke me up and explained to me that they thought we were going to be in serious trouble when the busing started, that it was going to be worse than anybody believed. And so we sat down and talked about what we needed to do. And I went to see Harvey, and I told him to sit down, so I wouldn't faint when I got to the point where the number at the end was. And I explained to him what we thought we had to do to be ready to respond to this issue. And after I got done, he said, "Do what you got to do, and I'll find the money." And we were better prepared than any police agency in the state of Kentucky when it came along. We handled it with less violence and with less personal injuries on both sides of the line. And I want to thank you for it.
well, thank you, Chief. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'm a little height challenged. Good evening, I'm Sean Spencer. I am an 80s kid, so a lot of names that you've mentioned, I've had to take notes and I'll have to go back and look up. But one of the things that I wanted to say is thank you for being the leader that you were. I just started getting my foot in politics, and everyone says, oh, you wear your heart on your sleeve, you're a people person, understanding how they feel and what's best for people outside of politics. And so they've given your name over and over again as an example. And so it's great to know that example is right here at home. So thank you for that. A question for that is, how did you balance the political world with your heart and passion for people and making sure that people have what they need to succeed and sustain their family and to be able to prosper?
Well, Jerry, how
That's
do
a
you
good
think-
one to end on.
Yeah, that is. Thank you for saying that. And Jerry knows this, and he did it in his administrations. You really got to have a set of values that you don't have to think about every crisis that comes up. Well, should I be here or there? You go by your gut, and 95% of the time you're going to do all right. If you try to shave it off and say, well, we'll do a little bit of busing, but not all of it, and this kind of stuff, you get into trouble. So, and also I had a great family that was in back of me, and that makes all the difference in the world, because they hear what's going on in the community, and sometimes the violence and the hatred and what have you, but they're always there for you. So let me, before I want your question, but let me just, I want to get in that as you read this book, it's a book of a life of public service that I hope our young people are going to take advantage of. I would like to see everybody who's between 20 and or 18 and 30 serve a year in public service. Do it in teaching. Go to the Peace Corps, AmeriCorps. There's so many things to do, green jobs and what have you. But it gets you out of yourself, and you meet people you never would meet otherwise, and it makes you a lot stronger and wiser person. So go ahead.
Good afternoon and good evening, Mayor Sloane. I'm Edith Yarborough. I'm so happy
okay.
always to see both you
Yeah.
and Kathy come back. I'm just really happy to hear that Abigail, Patrick, and Curtis are doing well. I grew up in the city's West End, Michigan Drive, which changed later to Muhammad Ali. I'm a product of busing, and Mayor Sloane and Kathy were kind enough to come back in 2017 to actually come in and help host. We had a forum. We had a forum where we had all the students who actually were bused from Shawnee to Fairdale. We all met together and hadn't seen each other in 40 years. I'll say that again. We had not seen each other in 40 years.
This was the pioneers.
The pioneers of forced busing.
Forced busing.
Yes, sir. And so it was a remarkable event that we held at Vincenzo's. And Joyce was there, one of the friends here, right here with me. She was there. It was just one of those events where it was transformative. It really was. Mm-hmm. I have developed a really warm friendship with Mayor Sloane because of Bill Gatewood. And I've just loved it. Every time he calls or comes by to Louisville, I've got to sit back and talk with him. He often shares so many stories of Lonnie and Muhammad Ali and so many others in the city. So we have a very transformative, charismatic leader, and we're so thankful that you come back whenever you can. So we appreciate you, Mayor Sloane.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, I think this, personally, I think this has been really great. And I've learned a lot. You got some insight about an individual that many of us thought we knew, and then we learn a little bit more, and we appreciate from whence he came to how he was and the things he did after he moved on from public service here in Louisville to other public services all over the world. The books are for sale back in the corner over there. I want to thank Kathy and Harvey for coming and being with us. Lonnie, it's always wonderful for you to be a part and to be with everyone here. This is Mary Moss. Nobody has forgotten summer scene and winter scene that you started. I remember that.
Yay!
So the bottom line is, folks, we're a better community because of all that they've done. But it's up to us and our kids and our grandkids to take us to the next level. Thank you all very much for being with us.
Thank you.